Welcome to another edition of Courtside with Rob and Washut. But before we head over to the arena, I want to give a big thank you to our sponsors of the show, Group Therapy Bike Tours and Slim Chickens. We'll start with Group Therapy. They are all in on the Nebraska basketball wave. Head over to grouptherapybiketours.com and book your ride today for all of your pregame, post-game, whenever game, birthday party, wedding, family reunion, corporate event. They have a 15-person trolley ride, a 6-person mini bike for whatever event you want to celebrate. And like I said, it is full force in Nebraska. If you've gone to a Nebraska game, I'm sure you've seen the trolleys riding around the Haymarket and downtown Lincoln. If you go over to grouptherapybiketours.com and use the promo code NebraskaBall, you will save 15% on your first ride. So make sure you head on over there and support our great sponsor. It's a ton of fun. I've been on it several times. Could not recommend it enough. Now over to our other sponsors, Slim Chickens. Bill Hooks and his wife Stacy are diehard Nebraska fans, and they couldn't wait to jump on the Nebraska basketball train. Locally owned Slim Chickens has 2 locations, 84th and Old Cheney and 16th and Pine Lake. Slim Chickens features a variety of options with fried and grilled chicken tenders, wings, salads, wraps, sandwiches, chicken and waffles, and southern sides. What makes Slim's different? Well, they have over 17 different dipping sauces for guests to choose their favorite. Slim Chickens is available for dine-in, drive-through, or delivery via their online ordering. Check out Slim Chickens app and start earning rewards today. Slim Chickens is always a favorite for large gatherings and tailgate parties, especially Nebraska basketball tailgate parties, and let them do the cooking for you. Slim Chickens is moving forward, and they are expanding to the north side of Lincoln soon, so keep an eye out for that. Stop into your local Slim Chickens restaurant today for some southern hospitality and see their newly remodeled locations. Again, thanks to all our sponsors. Now let's head over to the arena and take you courtside with me, Rob and Washut. Welcome back to another edition of Courtside with Rob and Washut. Here I am at Welsh Ryan Arena, and Nebraska pulled off another victory, another Big Ten victory, another Big Ten road victory, and the Husker train just keeps on rolling, this time with a 77-58 demolishing of the Northwestern Wildcats. A game that was pretty competitive at first, especially through the first half. You know, Nebraska had some issues with Nick Martinelli, which most teams do. But really, you go back to when this game flipped for the Huskers. To me, it was kind of through the first 7 or so minutes of the second half where Berke Bjuktajul, who had picked up his third foul 30 seconds into the second half and immediately went to the bench. And when he came back with just over 13 minutes remaining, it felt like it breathed some life into Nebraska's defense, where suddenly not only were they just finishing defensive possessions with rebounds, which allowed them to get in transition and kind of play with the pace that they wanted, but he helped shut off Nick Martinelli, where he had just 7 points in the second half and finished, I think it was negative or minus 14 or so in the second half. So, really was able to take him out of the game. And that was the game plan, where you knew Martinelli was going to get his. The key was making sure no other Wildcats stepped up and had career days in his place. And Nebraska did that collectively as a whole team. But I think that started with Berke, where suddenly he gave them that defensive low post presence that took away the rim, made life difficult for Martinelli. They were able to continue to challenge pretty much everything Northwestern did. They had great closeouts on the perimeter shots. Like I said, they finished hard and boxed out with real physicality on the glass, and you saw a lot of deflections. That's the hallmark of Nebraska's defense. And against a Northwestern offense that is better than any team in the country, at least they were coming in taking care of the basketball. They ranked number 1 in the country in offensive turnover percentage. They ranked number 1 in the country in turnovers per game at only 8.3. Well, they had, 6 turnovers in the first half, finished with 11 on the day, and 7 of those were steals from Nebraska. So not only were they just getting deflections, they were turning those into takeaways. And, the points off turnovers was 12-5, a modest advantage. But I think the real impact that made wasn't exactly the direct translation from defense to offense. It was what it did to fluster everything Northwestern did offensively. And again, when Martinelli wasn't just doing whatever he wanted, it was a real uphill battle for the Wildcats to find any semblance of offensive consistency. And then, again, one of what this team, Nebraska team, has become is one that when they are clicking on defense, their offense immediately follows. And they started knocking down shots. And again, that goes back to the pace to find those trailer threes and be able to have the ball pop in the way it needs to pop. All of that kind of came into shape because of the way that they flipped the switch defensively and got that going. And so, obviously, the from offensive standpoint, once again, Braden Frager, Bryce Sanford stole the show. Second game in a row, they've both hit 20 points. It's the first time since Bryce Williams, Juwan Gary did it. And so, they've kind of been go-to guys on that end of the floor where, Braden was only 2 of 7 from 3, but he hit a couple big threes. His 2 makes were big, but he was 8 for 14 from the field. So that means even though the outside shot wasn't falling, he was excellent in transition. You talk about the pace and playing downhill and attacking the rim. Braden, like always, set the tone more than anybody else in that regard. And he was aggressive, assertive, getting to the rim, finishing at the rim once he got there. And so that allowed him to have a productive game, even when the 3 ball wasn't coming as easily as it did last time out when he hit 7 of them. So, and then Price was Price. Unbelievable performance, 7 of 13 from the field, 5 of 10 from 3. He's got one of those games where when he gets hot, it is really hard for other teams to defend him because he has such a quick release. He doesn't need any space to get his shot off. And Nebraska's looking for him. His teammates are looking for him on every possession because they know better than anybody when Price has that hot hand. And today was one of them. So really a collective effort. And maybe the best part of all, Rink Mast only played 19 minutes and 30 seconds. That's the second game in a row he's played 20 minutes or less. And I know there was some concern, like maybe his knee was bothering him. Fred Hoiberg did not seem concerned whatsoever. In fact, he praised it as a luxury that Nebraska has been able to do what they've been doing without needing to ride Rink from start to finish all the way to the finish line. So that is a big thing about, keeping this core group fresh down the stretch. Your top dogs need to have days like this where they don't have to put in 38 minutes. You look at Nick Martinelli, when he was on the floor in Northwestern, couldn't do anything. He played 38 minutes, and by the second half, he looked absolutely gassed. That's what Nebraska's trying to avoid by limiting Rinks in particular his minutes, because he's a guy that they know that for them to have any sort of postseason run, he's got to be out there and be as fresh as possible. So games like this one, like Oregon, the ones where Nebraska can get out early, build up a big lead, and get Rink on the bench, those are the most ideal possible victories. And so check that box on that one as well. So, I think what this game, Nebraska was supposed to win. I think they opened at 4.5-point favorites. And the line moved up to 5.5, depending on where you looked. And I know a lot of people, or some people, were nervous about it just because, it's kind of the mentality, one, of Nebraska fans. But then also, this is one of those games where, like, Northwestern's, they're winless in Big Ten play, but they are a better team than their record would indicate. Like, and Fred Hoiberg's the king of gassing up their opponent and talking about all the things they do well. But he's right in the sense that Northwestern, until today, didn't get blown out. They're a team that is competitive, and Martinelli's one of the best players in all of college basketball, and really few teams have an answer for him. And if he can get any semblance of help, they're a real challenge because of the attention you have to give to containing, or at least trying to slow down, Nick Martinelli. So this was kind of a situation where you looked at, like, Nebraska, everybody's just waiting for that other shoe to drop. Could this be the one where they're going against a team, you look at their record, they're 0-6 in Big Ten play. Is this the game where Nebraska finally does get fat and happy? And they're like, all right, we can just go through the motions on this one. They didn't. And again, I say that because of the way they were locked in defensively from the jump, and turning over a Northwestern team that doesn't turn the ball over and getting them out of their comfort zone on the road. And that's a really hard thing to do. And Nebraska's been so good at it all season long. You look at every one of their Big Ten road wins, they have shot out of the gate. And whether it's, Price lighting up Illinois, or games like Northwestern where they are locked in from the opening tip defensively, that is how you get to where Nebraska is at this point in this conference. You have to be 100% locked in, and every player that steps on the floor has to be locked in. And that's been the case for Nebraska all season long. And, that's how you get to 18-0. So, there's the Washington game coming up on Wednesday night, another sold out crowd. Every home game is officially a sellout the rest of the way. So home court advantage back on Nebraska's side. But let me tell you, of all the things that may have been an X factor in this game, hats off once again to the Nebraska fan base. Like my colleague, Steve Sipple on HuskerOnline, earlier in the week, he called a shot. He said, this has all the makings of a big red invasion. And I was a little hesitant, I'll admit, just because I've never seen it. The games that I've gone to, you're talking about maybe like a smattering of fans where, you're talking about 50 to 100. So to think that like thousands would roll into Evanston, Illinois to, watch men's basketball, I was like, all right, well, maybe I need to see it before I can believe it. Well, we saw it today. It was, it's a small arena. It only seats just over 7,000 fans, but it was easily a 50-50 split of Husker fans versus Northwestern fans. And not just in terms of numbers, but in terms of energy, it was 90-10. I felt bad for the in-game experience people here. They kept trying to get the crowd going and starting let's go Cats chants. As soon as they tried to do that, it was immediately drowned out by Go Big Red chants. When the final seconds were ticking off the clock, it was echoing through the rafters here at Welsh Ryan, the Go Big Red chants. And Nebraska fans showed out, and it's going to be really cool to see if that continues. They got another, doable road game at Minnesota coming up next weekend. I'm very curious to see if Husker fans don't show up and show out like they did today at the barn. That's a game that Nebraska, they're going to need some help. Minnesota is extremely difficult at home. Nico Medved might not have the talent as some other teams in the conference, but they're about as well coached as is in this league. And so that's an X factor that can be the difference. Nebraska's like done everything they could possibly do to this point, but to finish this thing the way that they've started, having that type of fan support on the road, not let alone at home, having the rest of your home games sold out, that's incredible in its own right. But to have this type of showing in a road venue in league play, that doesn't happen very often. I mean, there's been games I've gone to, Michigan State or Purdue roll in. They didn't have this type of support that Nebraska had tonight in Evanston. So, I hope it keeps going. It made for an extremely fun environment, and maybe Saturday at Minnesota can be the next Big Red basketball invasion. That'll do it for me today. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Once again, thank you to my sponsors, Group Therapy Bike Tours and Slim Chickens. Head over to their websites, check them out, get some great deals, and tune in again Wednesday night. Pre-game thoughts and post-game analysis from Nebraska's next contest against Washington.